Hello and welcome to episode 6 of Leadership Conversations with Krishna. And today I have my guest, John Kennedy. John is currently the CEO and founder for Actual AI, which is a co pilot for software engineering managers. He's also a core partner at Underscore VC, a featured speaker at Product School, and was formerly the head of product at AWS Game Tech. Welcome, John. How are you today?
Thanks, Krishna. I'm great.
So, John, the way I like to start it is, just understanding the journey and the person, and how fascinating journey, right? You grew up in Australia, studied in Australia. How did you end up in the United States?
Yeah, that's a long story. So, I started out in software engineering and systems administration in Australia. And I actually grew up a little bit in the UK as well. My father's a surgeon, so he trained in the UK. So, we were back and forth when I was growing up. And my first kind of move internationally was because I wanted to go and, pursue a career internationally. I wanted to go and go back to England and see what it had to offer. So that was kind of my move actually into engineering management from being an engineer. The first time I was a manager, I could moved internationally to London and picked up a job there for Edexcel, which is part of Pearson Education. And that was an amazing move, but I only really stayed there a couple of years before coming back, realizing that I wanted to start my own company. And I started that startup in Australia. We did pretty well as a little startup. Ended up, being able to buy my apartment in Sydney. But what I realized there was that, it was really hard to get venture backing building a company out of Australia. There are some exceptions. But generally, the UK or the US is a much easier environment to get venture backing and grow a company really quickly. Yeah. So I mean, I could continue along that journey if you like. But what had me kind of leave Australia originally was the idea that I wanted to build a company that was venture backed and could scale quickly.
That is fascinating, John. And I just want to understand in terms of life and also the business ecosystem. How do you compare the three countries, right? And I know there is this perception Australia is kind of slightly laid back. The US is a place where you have to go get work on your goals. How do you compare these three countries?
Yeah. I think cliches are often anchored in truth. Um, I think Australia is a wonderful place. It's beautiful and the people are lovely. Um, but two things about it make it, harder to build a business there. One, it's the end of the earth. Like it's outside of all of the time zones that are helpful to build businesses. Most of the companies are headquartered in Europe or US East or US West. And so it's difficult from that perspective, to kind of build a large client base or customer base. Being in one of those time zones is much easier. And the other part is just that people tend to be more business focused and motivated in the US. That's not true of all of Australia. In fact, kind of in Sydney and Melbourne and even Brisbane to an extent where I'm from, there's kind of white hot centers of startup where people are very motivated and very business oriented. But I would just say on average, the US as a country tends to be people, have people who are more business driven, and that environment means that deals go faster and people kind of want to work with you more quickly and get things done. So that's quite helpful.
Got it. And just kind of jumping more into your professional journey, right? And you started with a little bit of IT, then moved up to software engineering, and then into product management, and now you're building your own startup, which is a product. How did you go up the ladder? Was it a easy or a tough journey? How did you go about it?
Yeah, well, when I did my degree between 2000 and 2005, I was majoring in artificial intelligence. And I knew even at that point that I wanted to be building a company in AI. But we were kind of in AI winter at that point, and no one really believed in it. I was building little neural nets that could recognize letters, but not do anything very important or interesting. So I went in software, which most people did on the back of the dot-com boom. And by 2011, when, Mark Andreessen was saying software is eating the world, I started my first startup. And, I'd always wanted to do that. But as I said before, I realized that to be venture backed, I would need to build a network. So my next step after building my first startup was actually joining a Series A. And, the path wasn't direct from software engineering to product management. When I joined that Series A, I was regional director. I was now doing sales, and I was building a professional services team and a marketing team for the whole of the UK. They were based in France and the US. So big divergence from that building my little software company role, where actually, my first startup, I was the CTO, I was the technical guy, and I had a partner who was doing, you know, sales and fundraising, these kinds of things. Um, so um, that was a big kind of you'd say in the US left turn because you have to cross the traffic. A big change from what I've been doing. But I got a lot out of that. It was great to work with that company. That company went on to be Platform SH, which is a very successful cloud infrastructure company. In fact, from there, I went on to another cloud infrastructure company, Acquia, and I was head of solutions architecture there. So that is really a joining of my expertise at that point. I had the business side, but then I was bringing my technical side and business side together and running that team. I was, attached to $1 million deals personally with, Lush and a range of other big companies across Europe. But also, I was running a team of people who were doing that. So really working with the sales team. I was on the leadership team for Europe. But also, I was building this team of technical experts who could do sales. And that was a really unique perspective to understand enterprise sales. And I think that was a really key part of me understanding how to build a business, was understanding the enterprise sales cycle. So it was in that company that actually Chris Stone, who was a mentor of mine, encouraged me to join product. He knew that I wanted to go back and build a company. But he said to me, if you want to build a company, the best thing you can do is become a product manager where you get to be the CEO of a little product within a company where you've got funding to build something, and you work with sales and marketing and, engineering, and you really get to kind of be the white hot decision, as hot center of the product and build the strategy. So, he had been co-CEO of Novell with Eric Schmidt. He was an amazing guy, lived many lives and has kind of very broad and deep experience. And so I trusted him on that. I was like, okay, I'll join product. So I became a product manager and eventually a product director for Acquia. And I really, learned a lot about how to build products at scale and how to market products and how to find product market fit and how to do pricing, and how to all of those, do deep customer discovery, all of those product skills that now some of which I teach, for product school at a few different universities. Today I, guest lecture a few different MBA programs to help people understand how to do those things with product management. So that was the path to product. It was kind of through sales, and then into product, knowing once again that I wanted to eventually build my company. And then going to AWS, I got offered an amazing role there. And I kind of, AWS is one of the most amazing places in the world to build products. And so kind of the finishing of my product education, as I thought of it at the time, was to go and join that team as a principal product manager. And AWS is amazing. And I got to build amazing things there and work with great people. I remember one of my meetings, I got to walk into a meeting with James Gosling, who'd written my Java textbook, like when I was back in university. It's like surreal. And there were lots of meetings like that, where I was meeting people who, I thought were really amazing and great people to work with, and ended up as head of product for AWS GameTech, which was great. But the whole time I was really thinking in the back of my mind, how do I get back to building my company? So it was a journey of building a network and building a skill set, to get back there. And I kind of had the seed of an idea back in 2020 about what I wanted to build. And so, when we reached 2023 and I'd spoken to lots of people about potentially building that, I was pretty sure that that's what I wanted to do. And so I took a sabbatical from Amazon, eventually quit Amazon, Left a lot of good people behind there. But I had to go and build my company.
Amazing journey, John. And just kind of stepping back on product management, right? And so a lot of people have this question: Do you need to have a software engineering background to be a product manager in tech, or is it can anybody even with a non-tech background or a more business background also be a product manager?
Yeah.
How is it different from the engineering aspect from your perspective?
Yeah. I think the easy answer would be to say, no, of course not. You don't need a tech background. I think the real answer is it depends on the product. So, as a product manager, you need you need to be a subject matter expert in your product. And that could be, you're a very experienced product manager in an adjacent subject matter area, and then you do a deep dive, and for the first year, you just talk to a lot of customers and become a subject matter expert. But even then, you probably had to be adjacent to that, unless you're just going to spend, a year or two of the company's time becoming an SME. So when it comes to technical products, if you're building an infrastructure product, if you're building an AI product, if you're building, something for developers or for engineering managers or engineering leaders, then it helps a lot to be technical because you understand their perspective, you understand their background. It's not impossible, but I would say that if I pattern match 90% of the successes there of product managers have been people who've been technical. Now, there are lots of products that are not technical, and you're selling to a non-technical audience. And for those products, and in my career, I've most often sold to a technical audience. But for those products, you can have tons of customer empathy and be a subject matter expert without being a software engineer. And so there are tons of products where you can go in and be a product manager and not be a software engineer. In some cases, it can be an advantage. You can work with a very good software team, and just be laser focused on empathy for your end customer who's very non-technical, and then you bring that perspective to the technical team. I think that understanding development trade-offs is helpful for every product manager. So the kind of sizing of work. But if you have a great engineering manager, then they'll bring that to you because there's this kind of counterintuitive process in product management where it feels to everyone like there should be an absolute prioritization of features that you build. But the reality is, it's not absolute. It actually is dependent upon difficulty. So, even if you have a top feature that would definitely get you 100 customers, if it's going to take you 2 years to build, it's not as valuable as building the feature that will get you 30 customers, but takes a month. So that kind of understanding between difficulty and benefit is important, and that helps if you've been technical or you've been a software engineer. But certainly for non-technical products, you can work with a great engineering manager or have a broad understanding of these things and still be able to do that prioritization.
No, those are amazing insights, John. And I think at the core is understanding the product. That's my takeaway, right? And it was fascinating when you said that back in early 2000s was when you heard AI and you kind of wanted to do something in that domain. And even me, I went to undergraduate in the 2010s, and AI was a thing then. I mean, we didn't know what AI was, but it was a very cool thing then. People wanted to know more. But then if you see now, right, coming to 2024, 25, AI has taken over the tech industry, and not just the tech industry. It is also now a talking point in world politics, geopolitics. It is a big part of uh, you know uh, government's priorities, be it any country, right? Be it the US, Europe,
Yeah.
Europe. I mean, Australia, India. How do you see AI shaping the tech industry? Right? Is services kind of going to reduce going forward?
Hmm. Interesting question. Yeah, back when I was studying AI, between 2000 and 2005, it was definitely AI winter. Um, but during the 2010s, a lot of interesting things happened. Um, you know, Progress was made because for the first time we were measuring, the reaction times of babies to their mothers' faces and realizing that you didn't need a neural network that was very deep to have some really amazing results. And so simulating networks became practical again as our hardware got better. We saw amazing advancements with AlexNet and a range of other things. Um, 2017 was a really interesting year because Jensen from NVIDIA said, software is eating the world, but AI is eating software. That was the same year that Attention is All You Need came out, the paper that described transformers, which is now the foundational technology of all of the famous AI technologies of today, like ChatGPT, etc. And he was so prescient at that point in time because in 2017 people really weren't convinced. There was talk about it, but it wasn't a foundational technology. But he described in that moment what was going to happen, and that's what we're seeing now. Now is the moment. Software has eaten the world. Every company has had to become a software company, but now AI is eating software, and every company has to become an AI company. And I think the we're seeing this big disparity, this bifurcation of software development, where on one side there are, VPs of engineering, CTOs, software engineering managers, and engineers who really get it, and they're implementing AI practices today. And that doesn't mean everything's perfect or everything works exactly as we'd want it to, but there's, the 10x developers today are going to become the 1x developers of tomorrow, just using the technology we have available today. So, we're looking at AI software development processes now that are quite sophisticated in some companies, and other companies just have no idea. And so the difference between the development velocities is huge. So, I was listening to a talk last week about an AI software development process, and the idea was you have a long conversation with something like ChatGPT. You use a prompt to turn that into a business requirements document, and then another prompt to turn that into a product requirements document, and then another prompt to turn that into a task list, and then another prompt to break that task list down into, one story point stories, and then you put that in the code, and that's what you work with in Cursor or another IDE like Windsurf. That's, you can have a conversation with the code base. That process is incredibly sophisticated and so different to regular software development. And if someone picked up like Copilot today or just used Cursor today, they would have one experience. But if they were that deep in in their understanding of how to build using AI, they would have a completely different experience. And so those worlds are very far apart. And there's plenty of software developers and managers and VPs who really don't get that and are, naysayers and think, well, this is going to be something that happens in 5 to 10 years. No, no, no. We're going to completely change the industry in the next year. And, in 2 years' time, a lot of how software development works will be completely different. And so, you mentioned services before. I think actually quite the opposite. I think that services companies are going to have a boom in the next 2 years as they have specialist teams who can use AI incredibly effectively and apply AI software development methods to any project. And so they can jump into a company that really doesn't have, an AI software development practice and accelerate that company by showing them what's possible, by prototyping, building new projects incredibly quickly, handing them over to the internal development teams who then have the basis to keep building them using AI. So I think services can go through, actually a big acceleration, and that may not be true forever. We'll probably see a big reshaping, resizing of software teams at the same time. But for many companies, services are going to be essential because they just won't be able to turn the ship quickly enough. And so they need to bring services in. For other companies, they will internally do that. They'll build an AI software development practice, they'll prototype it, they'll measure it, they'll see how it works, and then spread it out through the business quite quickly. Would say for the companies that don't choose either of those paths, there's an existential risk because they'll be outcompeted, 10x development difference. And if you believe every company is a software company, that means that, if you lose on software innovation, you're really going to lose in your own market. And that's what I think we'll see. There's going to be plenty of blockbusters.
No, lots to look forward to, right? And how about AI agents, right? We're hearing a lot about AI agents, and I like to take a step back, right? And how do you think AI agents would actually help the end consumer, right? Is it going to make my life, let's say, as a consumer, easier or faster, or for that matter, even cheaper in terms of, when I choose products or
Yeah.
any other aspect of my life?
Yeah. There's kind of two, I think two questions there. So there's software development agents, and I think they are coming. We see kind of this happening in three stages. Right now, there's a lot of companies building AI pipelines with a SaaS dashboard, and then eventually we'll have an agent and a SaaS dashboard, and that's kind of where we're going right now. And then eventually you'll have an agent without the dashboard because it'll just be, you'll interact with it like you would, an employee, but we're a little way off from that. That evolution between those three stages is going to change every software company, and every company. But in terms of agents for consumers, I definitely see coming this idea that you have a personal agent. And so your personal agent has all of your private details. They probably have your social security number and at least view access to your bank account, and maybe they have your credit card number ready to go. They have all these things so they can take action for you in the world. And it won't happen all at once. The future is very unevenly distributed, but certainly there will be certain people who trust these early on, and that, at their own risk, but they're going to become very trustworthy. And what that means is that you may not have to browse the internet anymore. If your agent can go and actively gather the information you need and search for products that you ask for, but also maybe find products that you might need even though you haven't asked for them, then it completely changes e-commerce. At least, it probably changes a range of other industries as well. But I want a personal agent that knows all my preferences, knows my history, means that I don't have to sort through endless data that's crowded with ads. I want that ability to kind of augment my capabilities with an agent that's super intelligent and also knows me pretty well.
Yeah, that's going to be amazing. We're going to watch how this space develops, right? And so, does this mean that an AI agent can maybe book my vacation, or I want to travel from Seattle to Dubai, and it picks the best route based on my budget also for me?
Agents already do that. You can go online to an AI booking agent; it'll do that. I think the difference is, is in optimization. So the reason that I still use Expedia is that I want to pick, the amount of hours that I'm in the air. I want to reduce that down. I want to pick, the price. I want to match a good price, not necessarily the cheapest price, but a good price, as I understand it, with the length of hours that I have to be traveling and the route that I'm taking and the benefits of the particular plane that I'm traveling on and maybe the points program of the airline. So all of that, I mean, you can use an agent to book a flight today, but the difference with having a personal agent is that your personal agent is invested in your preferences and is really kind of optimizing for what you would optimize for. So all the capability is there. It's just our linking that up with the idea that we trust our agent enough to go and search the multitude of flights and then understand our preferences and bring us back the maybe two options or just three options, or maybe just book it for us. But that's certainly coming. Yeah.
And is it likely to be a one-on-one relationship between the agent and me, or is one agent going to be shared by multiple people? How is
You can think
and
of the movie.
is
You can think of the movie Her, if you've seen it. It's a good representation of what I think the future looks like. I'm not sure about the whole like we won't have human relationships anymore, but certainly the idea that you need a personal agent because that personal agent has access to your data. I don't want everyone to have access to my data. I just want, the thing that I control. And in fact, I'd probably be more comfortable if my agent was a box that sat in my house. And you can see boxes like that from NVIDIA coming out today. There's no screen or keyboard. It's just literally a box you put down. It's got a large language model in it. It can run very quickly. They cost about $3,000 at the moment. I think that price will come down, and I expect many people will actually have physical boxes. They sit in their house just as they would their regular computer, but is acting as their agent in the world and has access to the internet, but stores their data locally, and has controls around it, and you've probably got some monitoring system to make sure that your agent is following guidelines and these kinds of things. I think they may be deployed in the cloud, but then you've got to have a lot of trust with the provider of your agent. And there's probably companies who you trust for that as well. Companies you already trust with your credit card number and your social security number and, your preferences about your products and these kinds of things. But certainly I think you need some boundary around your data. And it might be that the models that we use are generic, like we might not be training models specifically for as my agent. We may not do fine tuning, or we may, but the data is the important bit. There needs to be, in today's technology, it would probably be, a vector database stores all of my data so that my agent has access to it in a way that, it can access it easily, depending on specific actions that it's taking. And we're seeing a whole bunch of new, very interesting technologies come out, like MCP, that can allow agents to take action in the world in very structured ways. But I think that if you don't have a literal agent that's dedicated to you sitting on your desk, you probably still have some kind of boundary around your data, and then a very careful way that an agent accesses that data and acts on your behalf, rather than using some shared agent. And even ChatGPT is kind of doing that. Like, there's an application on my desktop. It remembers things about me and puts it in a vector database that it can access only for me. So that concept already exists. I think we're just going to go further and further down that path.
Got it. Yeah. Just jumping topics, John, right? And talking a little bit about actual AI, the product that you're building. And I know you're calling it the co-pilot for software engineering managers. How do you think it's going to change management for software engineering leadership, and what outcomes are you going to are likely to come out of?
Yeah. So when we're talking to software engineers or software engineering managers who have good access, you have kind of exposure to AI products, we often call it Cursor for engineering managers, because we like to think of ourselves in the same way. Right now, software engineering managers use a range of tools. They probably spend 60% of their time in Jira and GitHub and Slack, and obviously email. Well, that's probably 100% of their time. But those tools were not built for them. Jira was built for product managers. GitHub was built for software engineers. We're trying to build the consolidated dashboard, and also application where software engineering managers can take action that's specifically for them. And there's a critical reason why we're building it now. I was talking before about how some organizations are able to make that leap into AI. One of the big blockers to doing that is really understanding the value of picking up AI tools. And the problem there is it's really hard to measure velocity, truly, actual velocity. And that's something that we can do. Just in the way that software developers in the past, if you wanted to know their productivity, you might have taken their code to another software developer and said, "Hey, how long would it have taken you to build this?" We can do the same with AI, with an LLM. We have a very sophisticated pipeline. We do an evaluation of code, thinking about quality, complexity, novelty, and bring you back kind of an estimated developer minutes. So you understand the kind of complexity that went into building something, and that gives you a velocity. So once you understand relative velocity between developers, you then can understand how big an effect AI is having on your software development process. And that can actually induce a change across the whole organization. So this is why it's key to the moment right now. We do many things with our tool. One of them is looking at velocity, but we also do summarization. And what that means is you can see what is being built. So across the organization, you can now see relative velocity between teams, between individuals. When you're seeing a big difference now, you can then go and look at the summaries and say, okay, are they blocked? What are they building? Is this something that's greenfield and so they should be going faster, or is there's some reason? Are they building to our priorities? So we can look across all the things that they've built in summary fashion and say, do these map to the business priorities? So we're building the tool that brings together all the information that the software engineering manager needs, but also processes that within LLMs. They've got new data, more data that they wouldn't have been able to gather at scale to be able to do their job better. And if we think about the avalanche of code that's coming with software developers picking up AI, this is absolutely critical. The ability to summarize what's going on is going to become more and more and more important. So that's the start. How do you have a one-on-one where you can go in with a list of the things that someone's completed without having to spend hours gathering that data? How do you go into a team meeting, understanding what the team has built, understanding which pieces might be blocked, being able to have really focused conversations? How do you go into a stand-up and have a very concentrated conversation? How do you generate a promotion doc with all of the things that a developer has been building over the past 6 months? All of those things are hard and take a lot of time today. And we can 10x the productivity of a software engineering manager giving them this tool that's backed by a really powerful AI pipeline that does all of this processing for them. So, you know, Cursor, you can ask it to do something, and it will make a bunch of changes to files and ask if that was this is the code you want to be generating. You go through a review and say yes, 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 no, alter, yes, yes, yes. And we kind of envisage the same process for software engineering managers. They can go in at the beginning of the day and see what the AI thinks should be done. So the AI will produce a range of insights about the business. This project is blocked. Need to talk to this person, congratulate that person. Let's see if this needs to be, if we can break down a user story into subtasks. And and let's predict how long those subtasks will take. Do you think this is correct? All the tasks that an engineering manager would do, we want to be helping them with to the fullest capacity of or capability of LLMs. So going strongly in that direction, we've got a range of pilot customers, and we've just signed our first big enterprise agreement. That's really exciting, and we've got a couple of pilots with some very, very big companies as well that are using this and getting a lot of value out of it. And we're really seeing the results for software engineering managers and VPs of engineering today, because as a VP of engineering, for the first time, they can have a view across the whole organization of what's being built and relative productivity and gaps in the organization. As that helps them re-level, reshape, resize teams, and that's magic for them. They've really never had this before, and in fact, there was even promises from past categories of companies that this could happen, but certain things like DORA metrics were useful to see if you were executing on agile processes, but they never gave you insight into relative productivity or project progress, summaries of what was actually being built. And that's where we really see the current technology shining.
So that's fascinating, and this is going to be really game changing, John. And having worked in a large company in the past, right, there were couple of challenges that I found, talking to engineering managers. I was in strategy, so I would have repeated conversations with engineering managers, right? And one of them would be addressing teams working in silos. And that means, if somebody has 10 to 12 people reporting to them, the managers also want to see how well the team is working among the 10, 12. And the other is how well the team is working with the manager's counterparts or clients or other people in the organization, right? And the second challenge I found with managers is training, and training and learning is not easy, right? Com- coming up the curve, productivity takes a hit, and sometimes that training process, especially in certain industries, can be a lot more harder. How is your product somewhere addressing that, or is it slightly out of domain?
Yeah, so I think you kind of touched on services businesses. For services businesses, something they have to do every week is report on progress. So you can imagine how helpful it is to have a tool that actually summarizes everything the team built last week. You can literally take our summaries and put them into, a client report or take them into a meeting where you're talking to the client. So that's obviously a big benefit for the services businesses. I would say that on training software engineering managers, there's a lot of training which is human to human, interaction training. And so, how do you coach and mentor? And we're not doing that. But what we do is give engineering managers the time back so they can do that. And what we also do is we give them insights they can use in those conversations. So one of the things you do often as an engineering manager is if you identify a problem. So let's say you've gotten feedback from three different people that this particular developer isn't writing enough comments in their code, then, or something like that. The next thing you're going to do is go and gather data about that. Okay, let's look at the commits where they may not have written, enough comments in their code, and let's see what stories those were related to and which product that was in, and let's bring all that together so that when we have the conversation, it can be evidence-based, and it can be, if it's evidence-based, then it's less confrontational, and it's just more about how do we solve this together. It's not about recrimination. It's just about let's work this out. But to do that, you've got to have the range of feedback. You've got to have the range of data. Actually, AI pulls that all together automatically. So you can, have we have a system for aggregated feedback so that, people can leave feedback, but no human ever reads their feedback. So we kind of take all of that aggregated feedback and we can summarize it using a similarity search. So bring, similar feedback together and then give that to the manager. So the coaching says something like, at least three people said this person needs to leave more comments in their code. But then we can also go out and bring the data together they need to support that from the code base, from Jira. So bringing that all together gives engineering managers this amazing tool to have conversations. We're not going to coach them on the human part of that, how to build rapport and make someone feel comfortable and encourage them. But we can give them all the data they need to have a great conversation. And certainly, as people have more time to have these one-on-ones, that's where you see them getting better at those kinds of conversations.
No, absolutely. You hit the nail on the head there, John. And another topic that I like to talk about, and you're also kind of in the startup world, right? Building a product also with a VC partner. How do you see the startup industry shaping in the US in the next 5 to 7 years? And also, if I take the liberty to ask you, and I know you've kind of been in two major cities in the US. How do you compare the Boston area with the Seattle area in terms of startup ecosystem?
Yeah, they're oddly similar, actually. Boston came from a history of big tech, with the kind of a lot of large technology companies coming out of teams from MIT and setting up around Boston. And Seattle is obviously the home of big tech,
Yeah.
with Amazon and Microsoft. Um, I think the difference to say somewhere like San Francisco or the Bay Area is that in the Bay Area, they've kind of been startup first. So, the companies there, there's a lot of companies uh, being born and growing quickly and dying. And that ecosystem makes for a lot of people moving between companies and sharing information. So there's a culture of sharing more information, and that means you get more people at meetups, and those people are willing to share more about what they're building and their process, and the pitfalls and technology as well as business. And so that kind of sharing, culture is very strong. I would say that both Boston and Seattle still have a little way to go to get to that kind of level of, public uh, sharing of information. But they're very strong cities for technology. They both have very deep benches in terms of technology, software talent. And so, there's a one of the reasons we are here in Seattle is there's so many people we want to hire here. I love living here. We live in the forest, which is beautiful. I'm just live 20 minutes north of Seattle, and it's just a great place to be, and lovely people and just a great environment. But lots of places to go hiking and lots of outdoors things to do. But but definitely the idea that we can draw from this talent that has been, at large tech companies and a range of other kind of B2B enterprise software companies is really attractive as well. Um, yeah, in comparison between them, Boston has access to the East Coast, so they're little, say, a little bit closer to fintech in some ways because New York is right there. Seattle has access to San Francisco, and so makes the mix a little bit different. I think it's easier for us being in Seattle than Boston building a company. I tend to be down in the Bay Area pretty regularly, so it's a much shorter flight. um, you know, uh, but yeah, lots of similarities actually between Boston and Seattle.
No, absolutely, and that's great to hear, right? And obviously, Seattle has that ecosystem and being the home to some major companies like Amazon and Microsoft, and also having the University of Washington, right, which is a major player in the region,
UW is
also helps,
amazing. Yeah,
right?
it's a great
Yeah.
university.
Just jumping to the final portion of the podcast, right? Is there's always two questions that I like asking my guests, right? And in a way, you could call it my signature questions, right? How do you and you, just taking you back as a 20-year-old, right? If let's say you were in your 20s today, what industry or domain would you want to enter as a 20-year-old today?
I mean, it hasn't changed. In my 20s, when I was a teenager, I picked AI, and it would be AI today. I think, we're going a very vertical path of AI, so we're taking AI and applying it to software engineering. I think there's lots of things you could apply AI to, but it's, I'd be doing the same thing.
No, that's great to hear, and you're doing it right now. So
Yeah.
that it's great that you maintain that consistency, right? And the final question is, what does leadership mean to you, John?
I think leadership means different things at different sizes of the company. Right now as a startup, um, I have to be wearing lots of hats, but at the same time, still be able to bring, the information that my developers need and my CTO needs to them effectively. I want to build a culture where they see the vision and are enthusiastic and are excited about what we're building. Um, Leadership, I think definitely means building a culture and leading by example. And I've seen that in lots of companies. I think as you grow, leadership ends up being a much more public role, and being more oriented towards PR and more oriented towards the public vision of the company. So you attract the talent and you attract the customers at scale. Right now, it's a very personal affair. I have one-to-one conversations with people, and eventually, I'm going to need to scale out and do more one-to-many kind of, interactions, like podcasts. But for now, it's very much about conversations every day and how those happen and what I can bring to those conversations in terms of culture and experience, enthusiasm and vision.
That's fascinating. And on that note, we end the podcast today. But thank you so much, John, for joining us today. I'm sure the viewers would love your insights, especially on AI agents, and also a lot of them would be fascinated to know that you knew and started learning AI from as early 2000s, right? So a lot of takeaways, I'm sure, and people are going to love it. Thank you again, John.